Welcome to Neo Royal House of Pricey Cardboard. Today, on episode 28 of Commander Gameplay, we're back with the second episode of the Ravnica League. If you didn't watch the first one, number 26, I encourage you to go over there to learn about the special rules. We're heading into the fire of combat today. The Boros Guildhall awaits us. Once per game, the first player to deal combat damage becomes the monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you are not the monarch, create a 1/1 red and white soldier token with haste. Donnie is the guild leader and he is playing the new legendary Bell Borca Spectral Sergeant. It's a pretty interesting list, looking to amplify the damage we can do to each other with the Guildhall tokens and turn his into bigger beasts with effects like Luca. Kelly joined the league and is playing our mono-black general, Ghoul Caller Gisa, looking to create a lot of zombies and pump them to take us out with the Horde or other triggers like the very powerful Ayara. I'm playing my Sidisi Brood Tyrant as we're not allowed to switch in the league, self-mill, reanimation, tokens, blah blah blah. And Paul is playing his challenger deck, not the Golgari Guild Leader one. It's a pretty particular list, it's pretty much a casual storm deck, if that makes sense. He runs a lot of spells that untaps lands, cast trigger, and copy. From what he told me, the real goal is to resolve a massive epic experiment. I don't take the opening hands in the league, but I did note mine this time. I kept Scavenging Ooze, Oran Frostfang, Genesis, Diligent Farmhand, Yavimaya Coast, Drowned Catacomb, and a snow-covered island. We've got a little bit of everything, good fixing on lands, a ramp, a drop, and a reanimator if I manage to kill it. Quickly before we begin, I want to shout out the two new Patreons of the channel, Chain of Commander and Hugo. Thank you both for your support, it means a lot. I get to start this match. And land drop a Drowned Catacomb. Kelly land drops a Swamp. And Donnie land drops Imaria Shattered Skyclave, one of the new dual-faced lands. Paul land drops a Command Tower, ending turn 1. I land drop Yavimaya Coast, and cast Scavenging Ooze. Kelly land drops a Swamp, and Donnie land drops Clifftop Retreat, while Paul land drops Rupture Spire. I land drop a snow-covered island, and want this monarch draw for myself. Going to combat, I send the Scoos to Donnie. The Guildhall grant me monarch on first blood. From now on, each player who is not the monarch will get a 1/1 haste token at his upkeep. I cast Diligent Farmhand, and at the end step, I draw for monarch. At her upkeep, Kelly creates a 1/1 Boros token. She then land drop Ancient Tomb, and cast Lash Right. Entering the battlefield, the living weapon creates a germ attached to it. Heading into combat, she sends the soldier to Paul. Donnie gets a soldier at his upkeep, and casts Scroll Rack. He goes to combat and attacks me with the soldier. Donnie becomes the monarch. He draws at the end step and discards Blessed Sanctuary to end size, missing his land drop. Paul gets a soldier at his upkeep. He land drops a Celestia Sanctuary and returns Command Tower to hand. For his combat step, he sends the 1/1 to Donnie, taking the crown. Paul draws at the end step and pass. I get a soldier and land drop Interland Arbor. Like everyone before me, I go to combat and take the crown with my Scoos. In second main, I cast my commander, Sidisi Brood Tyrant.
So we have a word for enemies to mutilated for military services. Furnitures.
I mill these 3 cards, creating a zombie. I then draw at the end step. Kelly gets a soldier, and she land drops a Castle Locthwain untap, which allows her to cast her commander, Ghoul Caller Gisa.
Oh, wake up, my lovelies! There's work to be done!
She head into combat, sending the germ on the Lash Right to Paul. Donnie gets a soldier at his upkeep, and casts Talisman of Conviction. He then used this new mana to activate the Scroll Rack with 4 cards. He happily draws and plays a Plains, which he then used to cast Land Tax, the solution to all his problems. Paul gets a soldier at his upkeep. He land drops a Command Tower and casts his commander, Kynaios and Tiro of Militis. Look what we fought for. Look what we built together. We then go to the end step, and each player may put a land into play from his hand. Every opponent who didn't and Paul then draw a card. We each take the land this time with Woodland Cemetery, Phyrexian Tower, and a castle Ardenval. I do not make a soldier as I am still the monarch. I'll end up a Morphic Pool and cast Oran Frostfang. Going to combat, I send Sidisi to Paul, a zombie to Donnie, and a soldier plus diligent farmhand to Kelly. Attacking, I mill these 3 cards, creating a zombie. Everyone blocks with their tokens. I draw at the end step for Monarch. Passing, Kelly land drops a Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. Heading into combat, she attacks Donnie with a soldier. In second main, she sacrificed the soldier to her tower to make 2 black mana, and cast Liliana Dreadhorde General. She then activates Gisa to sacrifice the germ, creating 2 zombies and drawing a card. After that, she -4 Liliana and everyone sacrificed 2 creatures. Kelly draws 2 more cards from the Planeswalker static ability. Donnie fetches for 3 basic at his upkeep. He gets a soldier and land drops a terrain generator. He then casts Crescendo of War. These tokens are about to get interesting. The enchantment will gain a counter at every player's upkeep. Paul gets a soldier and casts Veldaken Orori. He then land drops a Gruul Turf, returning his basic island to him. I land drop a snow-covered swamp and go to combat. I send the snake to finish Lily and CTC to Kelly. I mill these 3 cards, missing my zombie token. Oran Frostfang triggers for a card upon damage. In second main, I cast Mirren of Clan Eltoth, and follow it up with our best friend, Sakura Tribalder. I then cast Elvish Reclaimer, and sacrifice Steve to get a land into play and an experience counter. At my end step, I draw for Monarch and return my Diligent Farmhand to the battlefield with Mirren. Kelly untaps. She sacrificed a soldier for 2 black mana, and casts Ugin the Ineffable. She +1 Ugin, creating a 2/2 spirit that will give her a card once it leaves the battlefield. She then casts Phyrexian Altar, and follow it up with Kaya's Ghost Form, enchanting Ugin. She pays 4 life to equip the Lash Rite with Phyrexian mana. At the end step, Donnie activates the Scroll Rack, putting the 3 lands he has in his hand on top of his deck, before going to his upkeep and triggering a land tax for 3 basics, which shuffles the top of his deck, giving him kind of a delayed 4-draw per turn. Value. He also gets a soldier and a 4th counter on Crescendo. He land drops Emeria the Sky Ruin, and activates the Terrain Generator to put a mountain tap on the battlefield. For his combat, he sends 2 tokens to Ugin. Ugin takes 10 and comes back with the Ghost Form.
Yeah, good old Eugene. I think it's really funny that, like, the big protagonist, antagonist of the Magic story are effectively named Nicole and Eugene.
Donnie then casts Chain Reaction, wiping the board. I gain 4 experiences from Mirren and Donnie passes. Paul gets a soldier and land drops an island. He casts Gutter Snipe, and then Realms Uncharted, which triggers the Goblin. He reveals Exotic Orchard, Reliquary Tower, a Forest, and Temple of the False God, choosing Kelly for the pause. The Forest and Reliquary are sent to Paul's hand. He heads into combat, attacking me with the soldier and taking my crown away. He draws for Monarch and discards 2 Ensize before passing. I make a soldier at my upkeep and go straight to combat. The Monarch is unavailable, and so I attack Donnie with my soldier. In post-combat main phase, I recast my commander. I mill these 3 cards and create a zombie. I then land drop a Myriad Landscape before casting Altar of Dementia. I give the turn to Kelly. She untaps and gets a soldier, and finally draws another swamp to her joy. She land drops it for a turn, and +1 Ugin for another spirit. She then casts Dread Return, returning Gisa to the battlefield. Going into combat, she sends her soldier to Paul and he does not block. Kelly becomes the monarch. She then casts Zombie Master, and sacrifices her soldier for 2 black mana to the tower, to equip the Lash Rite to her spirit token. She draws at her end step. At his upkeep, Donnie gets a soldier and reacts to his land tax trigger by activating the Scroll Rack. He then searches his library for basic lands and shuffles it, before drawing for a turn. He then finally casts his commander, Bell Borca, Spectral Sergeant.
The Boros Legion congratulates you for your courage, son, and wish you a speedy recovery.
He followed it up with Mana Barb, passing. Paul gets a soldier. Heading straight into combat, Gutter Snipe and 2 soldiers attack Donnie. He blocks with a soldier and his commander taking 10. Paul gets the crown. In second main, Paul casts Undo Inversion, taking 8 from the mana barb and destroying all non-land permanents. In reaction to the board wipe, I sacrifice my soldier and then 5 zombies that are created from my mill, to put some more stuff in my graveyard before letting the board wipe resolve. At my upkeep, I get a soldier and the crescendo is no longer on the table. I'll end up a Phyrexian Tower, and go to combat taking the crown from Kelly. In second main, I recast Sidisi. I mill these 3 cards, creating a zombie. Kelly land drops Cabal Coffers. She then casts Caged Sun. She followed it up with Crypt Breaker, and then Stoneforge Masterwork, which she equips to the small zombie. Donnie gets a soldier at his upkeep, and land drops a Plains. He casts Elspeth Conquers Death. On the first chapter of the saga, Donnie exiles the Caged Sun, before casting Crawl Space. Paul gets a soldier at his upkeep, and he land drops a Forest. He then casts 1000 Year Storm, and a Protective Sphere. At the end step, I crack my Myriad for a single Sad Swamp, as there are no more basics in my deck. I untap and go straight to combat. I send Sidisi to Kelly and my zombie and soldier to Donnie. Attacking, I mill these 3 cards and make a zombie. In second main, I cast Entomb, tutoring for Dread Return in my graveyard. I'll then drop a Path of Ancestry before casting Genesis. I sacrifice my soldier, Genesis, and a zombie to flashback Dread Return. Meren makes a comeback on the battlefield. I then go to my end step, drawing from Monarch, and I also bring back Eternal Witness with Meren, which then returns the Sallow to my hand with her ETB. Kelly gets a soldier and casts Mana Crypt. She then activates Crypt Breaker, discarding Living Death to make a zombie. She recasts Gisa before passing the turn. Donnie draws and uptick his saga to chapter 2, making his opponent's non-creature spell cost 2 more, kinda turning off my 3 mana counter spell. He then casts Ugin the Spirit Dragon, and to Kelly's Great Despair -6 Ugin to exile all colored permanents that cost 6 or less. In reaction, Kelly uses Castle Locthwain to draw a card and lose a life. After that, Donnie casts Lightning Greaves and pass. Paul gets a soldier and recasts his commander. He then land drops Azorius Chancery, returning a land to hand. Heading into combat, the soldiers goes to me, taking my crown away. We go to the end step and Kynaios triggers. Paul puts a forest into play and all full players draws a card. He then draws from Monarch and pass. I get a soldier and land drop a forest. I cast Court of Calling where X equals 5. I search my library for the Scarab God. For my combat, I finish the Spirit Dragon with my soldier. Kelly succeeds her Mana Crypt trigger and makes a soldier. She then land drops a swamp and casts Extraplanar Lens, imprinting a basic swamp. She recasts Gisa once more. Heading into combat, she sends the soldier to Paul, generously handling the crown. At the end step, she draws from Monarch. Donnie gets a soldier and recasts his commander. He equips the Greaves to him before casting Ghostly Prison. Playing the Monarch roulette, he sends a soldier to Kelly, and at the end step draws from Monarch. Paul gets his soldier and land drops an island. He casts Aetherflux Reservoir, which is never a good sign. He goes to end step, Kynaios trigger, everyone draws and Paul gets an island into play. At my upkeep, Scarab God triggers. In reaction to its effects, I eternalize Bane of Progress and ran Frostfang from my graveyard. The Bane ETBs and destroys all artifacts and enchantments, gaining 6 counters. I then resolve my Scarab God trigger, losing 2 to my opponents and scrying 2. I'll then drop Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. And going to combat, I send a soldier to Donnie and Scarab God to Kelly. Kelly reacts to attackers by casting Deadly Relic on the Scarab God. I sacrifice my creature to Phyrexian Tower to prevent the exile. I then get the crown. And at the end step, draws a card, returning Scarab God to my hand. I then discard to end size. Kelly land drops a swamp and casts Ayara First of Locthwain, another problematic card. Entering the battlefield, each opponent is drained for 1. She then casts her best friend, Phyrexian Dreadnought. Paul reacts with Rewind, countering the 1 mana 12/12. She then passes. At his upkeep, Donnie gets a soldier and exiles Arid Mesa to his commander. He casts Sunforger before equipping it to Bell. He then unjumps a plains and casts Relic of Progenitus, which is just awesome. I love it. At the end step, Paul casts Frantic Search. He then untaps and gets a soldier. He casts Rustic Study, and at the end step, each player draws a card. Reacting to the Kynaios trigger, I cast Beast Within, targeting the Sunforger. Paul reacts with Scattering Stroke. Paul and Donnie clash, and Paul wins, which turns his spells into somewhat of a mana drain. At my upkeep, I pay for Genesis to return Crypt Breaker. In response to the target, Donnie cracks his relic to exile all graveyards. I react with Disallow to protect my grave. Donnie responds by unequipping the Sunforger to cast Deflecting Swat from his deck, changing the target of the counter to his spell. After all that, I draw for turn. I'll enjump a forest and cast Soul Ring. I head into combat and send a zombified around Frostfang and Bane to Kelly, which she blocks with a soldier. She then sacrifices the soldier to turn it into a zombie with Gisa, triggering Ayara. She then takes 4 and I draw a card. In second main, I cast Toxic Deluge, putting 8 life into the spell. Kelly's patience is reaching its limits. I cast Burning Pod and draw at the end step. At the upkeep, Kelly gets a soldier and sends it directly to me. In second main, she recasts Gisa for 14 mana, paying the Rustic Study tax. We then go to Donnie's turn, he gets a soldier and equip his Sunforger to it. He goes to combat and sends the soldier to Kelly. She do not block with her 14 mana commander and dies, finally free of this board-wide tribal game. In second main, Donnie casts Elspeth Sun's Champion. He +1 the Walker to make 3 1/1 tokens, passing. Paul gets a soldier, he gets 3 mana from his Scattering Stroke. Using that, he casts Barrel's Expertise targeting Sunforger, Burning Pod, and my Bane of Progress, which is a token. In reaction, Donnie unequips Sunforger to cast Teferi's Protection. Paul does not cast a free spell from the expertise. Left in a weird 1v1, Paul sends the soldier to me. In second main, he casts Hunting Pack, creating 2 4/4 beast tokens from the Storm spell. I get a soldier and cast my commander. Milling these 3 cards, I create a zombie and pass. Donnie faces back in and lineups a plains. He equips the Sunforger to the token and casts Legion's Initiative. He then follows it up with Duelist Heritage. For his combat step, he attacks Paul with the soldier. Attacking, he grants double strike to it, and Paul takes 12. At the end step, Donnie draws from Monarch. Paul gets a soldier and casts Volcanic Torrent. Donnie reacts to the spell by unequipping the Sunforger. He fetches Boros Charm, dealing the final 4 damage directly to Paul. I get a soldier and a 1 turn clock with an unequipped Tutoring Hammer. I replace my draw with Dredge 3 with life from the loam, making a zombie. I go to combat and send Sidisi, a zombie, and 2 soldier tokens to Donnie. I mill these 3 cards and make a zombie. He then blocks with Elspeth's soldier, taking only 1. In second main, I recast the Scarab God. And then cast Mildrota the Gravetide. I use Mildrota's ability to cast Hostage Taker from the graveyard. Entering the battlefield, I exile Sunforger under the pirate, and from a very bad sequencing and 1 mana short of casting the equipment. Donnie untaps and casts Generous Gift, destroying Hostage Taker. He gains back his Sunforger and equip it to his soldier, before immediately unequipping it to cast Akuma's Will from his deck. Until now, I did not realize it was a new Sunforger option. He chooses the first mode to give Flying, Vigilance and Double Strike to all his creatures, and re-equips the Sunforger. In a final combat step, Donnie sends his board to me and I'm taken out of the game. Looking back at this game, I'm pretty sure I gave up my win in the last turn. I was holding Cyclonic Rift in my hand, so I had 2 pretty strong options. Play Scarab God and Old Mana Hop to Cyclonic Rift at the best moment, or play Mildrota instead, reanimate the Hostage Taker and cast the Sunforger so that I don't give it back if I lose my pirate. I kinda did half of each, which is just terrible. It was a 2-hour game, so I'm gonna use that as an excuse. Donnie's game was interesting. We didn't see Luca transmogrify any token, but the crescendo left a big mark on the game. 1 or 2 more turns with the crescendo on the table, and I'm pretty sure the game would have ended earlier. Katie was really out of patience by the end of the game. I think it was just too many board wipe for her taste. And Paul had a pretty soft game as well, playing some interaction here and there, but we didn't get a big storm-like turn. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Tell me in the comment what you think about these league games. The first one had a rough start, but when I changed the title and thumbnail, it went back to more regular stats. So whether or not you enjoy the video, I'm always open to feedback. See you soon and take care.